Hello and welcome to the River Grass Theater. This is where the charter school is going to have their meeting. And in their meeting, there's going to be a special speaker. His name is David Menasche, and was a teacher for many years. And so we're looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good to see you. Wow, we have like a lot of people in the audience today, more than ever before, I think. So it's good to see so many people here, all our teachers that are here, part of our charter system. This morning, we have a special keynote speaker to address you. Give you some words of wisdom, perhaps. And I want to take you back, for some of you even before you were born, to the year 1987. Who was on the planet in 1987? Okay. So, imagine this. Imagine this. It's the first day of school. It's August, it's hot, dramatic. It's August '87, it's hot outside. Ronald Reagan is the president. Yeah, the top songs were Los Lobos La Bamba and Michael Jackson, I Can't Stop Loving You. The top movies were Three Men and a Baby, and Fatal Attraction, which scared bunny rabbits all over the world. And there I was in a 10th grade classroom for world history, and what do? You call roll, right? So I had looked over the roster beforehand, and it was always important to me to try and pronounce the students' names correctly. I figure if the parents gave them their name, the least I can do is pronounce it correctly. So I'm going through the list and I get to the M's. And I didn't even give a second thought to this name because it seemed so easy. So, I'm calling roll. David Menasche. No, Mr. Bass, that's David Menasche. I said, oh, David, like the famous French artist. He goes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm like, okay, David. Because I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I met David Menasche. Now, let me tell you a little bit about David. David, to say the least, was a free spirit. He liked to do things out of the ordinary. One of the things he was involved with was skateboarding. He would skateboard everywhere he could throughout his hometown, which happens to be Pembroke Pines. How about that? So he's from here. He's from Pembroke Pines, and he went to Nova High School, where I was teaching at the time. Everything you said in class, David was the kid who would challenge what you said, but not in a mean-spirited way, just to keep you, I guess, on your toes or keep you honest. There was nothing that you could get by David. So as I'm preparing my lessons in 10th grade, and then again, I had him as a senior for advanced placement American government politics and economics, I would always think, all right, what is David going to ask here? And most of the time I got it right, but sometimes I didn't. But the thing about it was, you always had to be on your game with David, and his classmates as well, but especially him, because he would argue pretty much everything. And that was good, because it led to some great discussions. So, June of 1990, David is graduated from Nova. I shake his hand, at the graduation ceremony. I don't hear from him or see him for quite some time. But then, through various friends and other former students of mine, we reconnect, and I find out that David himself became a teacher. And he taught for over a decade at Coral Reef High School in Dade County. In fact, he was one of the founding members of that faculty when the school opened. And while he was there, he made a remarkable difference in the lives of his students. And I know this because he ended up writing a book called The Priority List. What the book is about is a journey that he took, because while he was teaching, he was stricken with brain cancer. And after a while, he was no longer able to teach. So he decided to take a journey. And he posted on Facebook, hey, I want to go and see my former students. Can anybody lend me a couch for a night? And before he knew it, scores of people responded and said, yes, you come here, you come here. So he took a journey from South Florida up to, David will get this, up to New York and across the country. He went to the Pacific Ocean and back, and he chronicled and journaled this trip and wrote this book, which is published by Simon & Schuster, and coming soon to a theater near you, they're making a movie. And the star of the movie is Steve Carell. So it's big time. So I asked him several months ago if he would be willing to come and address you as a teacher, talking to other teachers, and he graciously accepted that. Before I call him up, I have a short video. Mr. Bear, if you could get that going for us. Just a little more of an intro for David.
I got a certain sense of urgency about what I was doing. Limited, and now, especially at the end of my life, that I really had to make the most of it. I was that exact same way in the classroom. I perpetually thought that that group of students that I was with was my last group. And I wanted to have a big finale. I wanted to leave a great impression. I wanted these people to remember me and to know that I had made a difference in their lives. It seems on the whole, my students did enjoy my class and for the most part developed a true love for writing and appreciation for the things that we read. But most of all, it seems that our time together was most impressive to them because of the time that we shared as individuals. The one-on-one conversations. It wasn't the lessons that I taught. Those are the things that I hoped everybody would remember. You know, this fantastic book or assignment, they don't remember that in the least. What they remember are the moments that I thought were so insignificant. That was cool. I feel this need to prove something. I have no idea who I'm proving it to. Myself, you. But I want to know, and I want other people to know, that even like this, regardless of whatever situation you're dealing with, whatever trauma, disability, disease, that you can still have a life of fulfillment, adventure, purpose. And if I can do it one-handed and blind, then anybody can. And should. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pacific. My name is Menasche, David Menasche. I used to be a teacher, now I'm a drifter. Vagabond traveling cross-country to meet with my former students to find out whether or not I made a difference in their lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage David Menasche.
Thank you, Mr. Bass, and thank you all. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your incredibly busy lives, especially at this time of the year, the last vestiges of summer upon you, and kids coming to you on the 18th. I know you'd all rather be in your classrooms right now, getting things set up, getting your papers ready, getting your plans ready, but you're here, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for that. So, as Mr. Bass mentioned, he was my teacher, and he had a massive impact, not only on me as a person, but me as a teacher. And what I want to really talk to you about today is that you have that same influence over your students, an influence you may not even know you are having. There's no way Mr. Bass could have known when I was in 10th grade that I would go on to be a teacher, or that years after that, I would end up channeling him in class, actually saying things to my students that he had said to me. And that's the effect that you are having on your students as well. You may not even realize that they are hearing you or seeing the things that they are seeing, but trust me, they are. You have 30 sets of eyes on you at all times. They notice if your fingernails are dirty, if your shoes are scuffed, if there's something stuck between your teeth. All the little things they see and they do hear. So even though you're not at the front of the room giving a lecture or giving a lesson, you may be over by your desk or back in the corner of the room dealing with some papers, they're watching you. So please remember that and stay in character at all times. Keep your game face on at all times, because you are that role model. And when you're off in the corner of the room, going through your purse and there's things dropping all over the floor, they're looking at what's in your purse and they're making judgments on you. Oh wow, look what she's doing. Before I was a teacher, I was working in the service industry. I spent my life as a waiter and a bartender, and I had this gnawing feeling that I wasn't making a difference in the world, that I could call in sick on any given night and nobody would notice or care. Some other waiter or bartender would pour your drink and you wouldn't even notice I was supposed to have been there. I wanted to have an effect on the world, and I started giving it real thought on what kind of an effect I could have. And I realized that for me, teaching was my calling. Within the four walls of my classroom, it would be my show. And as you all know, you have a captive audience. There are actors that go their entire lives just auditioning for roles. You have a role, and you do 5 shows a week. Actually, some of you are doing 6 a day, plus 5 a week, to a captive audience. And that's true power. You have the power, as one of the earlier speakers mentioned, to embolden them, to enlighten them, but you also tragically have the power to destroy them. So you have to be very careful with what you say and how you behave, because they are watching, and your students are at a very susceptible and impressionable time in their lives, where little things that you may not think matter so much, do affect them. It can send them into the halls crying, for the rest of the day. So just please understand, from somebody who I taught for 16 years, and then in 2006, I was diagnosed with brain cancer. But that's not what took me out of the classroom. Even through chemotherapy and radiation and multiple surgeries, I still went. I barely missed a day of school, because I realized that I would feel just as sick at home as I would at school. But at school, at least I could be serving a purpose, doing something of value, something fulfilling. And I always believe that a person who has a why to live can always figure out a how. And for me, my why were my students. I didn't go because I was desperate to teach Jonathan Swift or whatever author we were dealing with that day. I wanted to go because I remembered that Melissa, last class, was in a tizzy because her parents are going through a divorce and her boyfriend decided to dump her at the same time. And I wanted to make sure she was okay, because I knew I was in a role where I would be missed. And I did have an effect, and my absence had an effect. So I didn't want to miss any school. And even now, I miss it desperately, and I'm completely jealous of all of you. Oh, I really am. You're about to meet fresh students, you've got a fresh start on the year, you get to reinvent yourself, all your outfits are fresh again, all your jokes are new, and that's great. This ability to start over with a clean slate. There really isn't any other profession where you get that. Architects don't finish. The year's not over, they just get another project, they design another house. But you get these fresh kids to start over with every year, and that's just amazing. All mistakes forgotten and forgiven. You can do it right this year. And for this moment, I'd like you to think back on last school year and your worst student, your worst situation. What went wrong there? How early on in the year did it go wrong? Was it on the very first day? I know it was for me. My very first student, my first year teaching at Coral Reef Senior High, the opening of the school, it was the first day the school was open. First kid to walk in the room, Aaron Rawcliffe, is drunk. Welcome to your dream career. Yeah, it's 7:20 in the morning, and he is absolutely smashed on the first day of school. And I didn't know what to do. I was a first-year teacher. I didn't know who to call. So I just trusted my instincts. And I took a knee beside him and had a talk. Because what I wanted to know is why he needed that. Why he needed at, dark 30 to be drinking before the first day of school. And he was insecure. And he had real issues. And from that very first day, from that opening conversation, I created a bond with him that continued on through the year and well beyond. When I went on my trip around the country, as Mr. Bass pointed out, I went to New York to see Aaron, who is now a very successful, very wealthy businessman working on Wall Street. I had no idea back then, but it turns out it was because of me, to some extent, that he decided to follow this route. I had this assignment that I used to give that I called the priority list. It was a list of 26 abstract words. Words such as love, honor, wealth, family, fun, spirituality, artistic expression. And when Aaron did his list, when he really gave it thought, he ended up putting wealth and career very high up on the list, which were things that at that point in his life, 16 years old, he didn't realize were very important to him. He was kind of the heavy metal version of Jeff Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. When he came into the door, first word out of his mouth, dude! All right, I know what I've got here. The educational theory that I was using as a teacher is something that I call the spiral. And I would explain it to my students early on in the year in a similar way that I'll try to explain it to you. Kids, especially teenagers who I was working with, are very self-centered. So we start right there at the middle of the spiral. Imagine a young child. Many of you have children, so picture your own. As toddlers, the only thing they care about, or as infants, the only thing they care about is themselves. If they're cranky, if they're tired, if they need to be changed, they don't care what's going on in the other room or what's going on in another continent. They care about themselves. Dead center of that spiral, self-centered. But as they get older, as we all get older, we start to pull away from that center, start to care about other people, other places, more abstract things such as the future, the past. I assure you, your toddler at home does not care about the future or the past. That kid cares about his lollipop. And you see it in his eyes. He's completely focused on that lollipop. And if he drops it, if it gets dirty, if he loses it, he will cry and cry and cry. Not because he lost his lollipop, but because he has lost the only thing that has ever mattered in his life. And he doesn't know if he's going to get another one. As we get older, we stop caring about those things quite as much, although we still care about our possessions, and, our car, our house, our people. But we do start to go to the outer ends of the spiral. And I saw that as my job, to start all of my lessons in the center of that spiral with them, to get them hooked and interested right away. For instance, if I was going to work, I was teaching AP English Language and Composition, mostly essays, speeches, and letters. So if I was going to work with the essay, The Ways We Lie, I would start it off at the center of the spiral by asking my students to maybe spend 10 minutes writing about a time that they told a lie or were lied to. Once I had them personally invested in the subject, right there at the center of that spiral, I had to take them away from themselves and introduce them to the author's opinion, to my opinion, to one another's, to get them to go to the outer rings of the spiral where empathy and educational application exist. What you need to do is understand that they're not going to care about your subjects just for the same reasons that you do. You're going to have to figure out what it is on that specific topic that they can relate to. Start your lesson right there with them. How does this apply to their lives? And you can even give it as a homework assignment the class before. If you know that you're going to be teaching about the attack on Pearl Harbor next class, maybe send them home with the assignment to write about a time they were attacked or a time they attacked somebody else. And then take it from that very personal experience and say to them, okay, you remember how violated and shocked you felt when you were attacked? Imagine how our servicemen in Hawaii felt that day, or how the entire nation felt. And you can then take them from that center, the center of their existence themselves, to how others felt, will feel. And that becomes the application of education. When they know how attacking another makes them feel, maybe they won't do it, or maybe they will. But at least they'll be doing it knowing what they're doing. And that is our job. And I hope you all enjoy it and understand that you are incredibly influential and therefore powerful. You really have power. And I hope you all understand that, because I want you to take a knee beside their desk every so often and have that class of two. Just make eye contact. Let them know that you're paying attention and that you care and that you're watching. Because they'll test you. I remember on essays, kids would sneak in, I bet you're not reading this. Or just make up some kind of gibberish. And then I would write off to the side, yes I am. I bet you're reading this, and underline it. Because they're trying to see if you're watching. Let them know that you are, that you're paying attention and that you care. I did it in some ways just by showing up, because the kids knew I was sick. I came after 10 days after surgery, with stitches still in my head. I don't think they wanted to see me just yet, but I was there and they were impressed. And I told them exactly why I was. Because I'm going to feel this way whether I'm at home or whether I'm here. But if I'm here, I could be with you. I could help you. I could be doing something of value. And I hope they appreciated that they knew it was my choice to be there. I wasn't forced to. I wasn't worried about getting fired. I had plenty of sick days saved up. I was there because I didn't want to miss out on the day with them. You're all very lucky to have such influential and important lives. And you do. I was joking with Mr. Bass on the way here about something he had said to me when I was a student, which I later said to one of my students. I was arguing with him, as he pointed out. Yeah, thanks for all those backhanded compliments. I feel awesome. There was some test or quiz that I had taken, and I was, let's just say, discussing with Mr. Bass one of the answers. And he said to me, which I later said word for word to one of my students, he said, David, I could agree with you, but then we'd just both be wrong. And that's the kind of teacher he was. Yes, I may have been that kind of mouthy kid who would, challenge things, but he was a stand-up guy, and he wasn't going to take any crap either. And I tried my hardest to model myself as a teacher after Mr. Bass, after a man who was funny and intelligent and caring, but strong. He was not a pushover in the least, and if anything, was not afraid to push you over. Excuse me. Okay, so allow me to move on. So on the 18th, you are all going to be in front of your students for the first time. First impressions matter. I still remember Aaron and his first impression, and they're going to remember you. So, as I'm sure you will, you'll all select your outfits well in advance and make sure that they look good, the shoes are shined, and the clothes are pressed. And I hope you do take that kind of care, not only in your outfits, but in what you're going to say to them on that first day. Most teachers like to go over the classroom rules and regulations, the structure of the class. Take some time, please, to get to know your kids. I used to play an interesting game, maybe not on the first day, but within the first week, where I would have each student in the class say something either interesting or odd about themselves. And then the next student would have to repeat what was interesting and odd about the person who went before them before doing their own. And then the next one after that had to do the first 2 kids, and then their own. So they all got to know each other, and it helped the class to become a unit, to become friends with each other, which would later help when we would have those open dialogues. They'd be willing to speak to one another and hear each other's ideas. And it helped me to get to know my kids. And I, of course, would say something interesting about myself and share in the same way, letting them know that even though I'm the teacher, I'm the authority figure in the room, that I'm an open book. That I'll answer their questions, that I'll, put myself in the same position I'm asking them to be in. And that matters to them. When they see that you read the chapter just as you asked them to do, they notice. And I would reread the chapter every night before class. Even though I had taught it for 15 years, I would still reread it to keep it fresh. I wanted to know my song well before I started singing. I was always terrified of not knowing the answer. Being at the front of the room, just duh. So I would reread those books every time, go back through the material, and retrain myself. Otherwise, I was frightened of becoming stuck in a rut and just relying on what I thought I knew, rather than learning fresh stuff and being fresh and exciting for them. Because whatever mood you're in, they will pick up on and have as well. So I always tried to teach things that I really loved and was excited about in hopes that they would also pick up on that love and excitement. And they do. If you hate whatever standardized test is being thrown at you this year, so will your students. You're going to have to explain to them that there is a reason for them to know these things. Remember, they are self-centered. And it's not just to pass a test. Trust me, that's not going to be good enough for them. You can't just say, you're going to need this for the end of the year test. No, make it applicable to their lives. Show them how this education matters and how it will help them. It's not just about that standardized test, which, as you know, every year there's a different one of, and we all try to use differentiated instruction to teach the standardized test, which I just find ironic. Don't help them to pass those tests, because of course the school needs them to pass the test, they need it. But please be mindful that there are more important things, especially to them. And to keep your eyes open to that. When you're at the front of the room trying to teach that the semicolon is more than just the winky thing in the text, they may be thinking about their parents going through a divorce or the boyfriend that just dumped them, and they're not going to care about your lessons. So you've got to watch them and know what matters to them so that you can get them to be interested in what you want them to be thinking about. And I would always prefer a motivated student over a smart kid any day. Because I can help them to get smart. But I promise you, you want to start by getting them motivated. And by showing your own love and excitement for the topic will help. They'll pick up on that. They're sponges, they're emotional sponges. When you come in miserable, they're instantly miserable. And if you ever do something as horrible as come in hungover or something like that, oh, you're going to have a class full of hungover kids. They're all going to be, oh, I hate this. You can't be that way. You're on stage. You have an audience. Okay. Getting back to the priority list. So as Mr. Bass pointed out, I got cancer and continued to teach. It wasn't until 2012 when I suffered some kind of an episode, either a seizure or a stroke, that it took away my vision, took away the left side of my body, that I could no longer drive to school, much less be effective in front of a room full of teenagers. So I decided to take a trip. And I posted on Facebook to all my students, gave them an update on my health situation, and told them I'd like to take a trip and asked if any of them had a couch available for me. Within 48 hours, I had offers in over 50 cities. I organized it, and I took that trip, alone, blind and crippled, in the winter, to the coldest places on Earth. When I was in Minneapolis, it was 20 degrees below zero, which for a Miami kid like me is not just cold, that's the temperature of the apocalypse. I now know that hell is not hot, it is cold. Most of you are learning that just sitting in this auditorium. It's cool. But I wanted to travel to see them because I was just sitting at home, restless and bored, empty, feeling purposeless. And I went on that trip. I spent 101 consecutive days on the road, sleeping on 75 different couches around the country, catching up with my students, many of which I hadn't seen in 15 or 16 years, to find out if I made a difference, and if so, what that difference was. And as I said in the video, more times than not, it was these quiet little moments between classes, during lunch, in the hall, when I was just there for them, not teaching the class, but just being one-on-one, creating that personal bond, showing them that there is somebody in this world who cares and who is paying attention. For most of the kids, other than their parents, their teachers are the only adult role models they have in their lives. And although I did want to be a teacher, I had no interest in being a role model. I didn't know that that was going to be part of the job when I went to college. I never saw myself as much of a role model. But once I got to the room and I realized that I was one, I started making sure that I was dressed well, that I was clean shaven and nails clipped, all of that kind of stuff, because I wanted them to know that I cared about my image, about the way I sounded, about how I carried myself. And especially after I was diagnosed with cancer, that became important to me. Because I knew that there was a very strong chance that either they would get sick at some point in their lives or they would know somebody who would. And I may have been the only person that they could look back on in their lives, as a reference to how to handle this. And I wanted them to know that even something like brain cancer, I got this. I'm okay. Let's get on with our lesson. There's more important things to talk about today. Hoping that if ever somebody they knew got ill, or even worse, if they got ill, that they could look back on that teacher they had back in high school, that little man that got cancer and didn't let it stop him. And it wasn't by what I said, but by how I behaved that I became a role model. How I lived my life. And after 75 couches and 101 consecutive days traveling alone, I came to realize that in so much as I was watching them and caring about them, they were watching me and they were noticing the things as well, those little moments. Like, I was having seizures in front of my students, and I thought I was real coy about it and that they weren't noticing. They did notice. They did notice that my hand would start to shake, that my voice would get a bit of a tremor in it. And they were scared for me and worried about me. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, they don't even see this. I'm being so clever. I'm over at my computer pretending to look something up, not facing my class, but they see it. They knew it. And hopefully, or not hopefully, but if one of them has to face what I faced, that they can look it squarely in the eye as I have and just meet their fate squarely without fear, without letting it stop them from living their lives. Because I'm not someone dying of cancer, I'm someone who's living with cancer. I'm trying to do it. Appreciate that, thank you very much. Although, lest I sound like some kind of Pollyanna, let me just say, brain cancer is nowhere nearly as much fun as the brochures made it out to be. Really, it's not. And if you can help it, avoid it. It's worse than a cold. Okay. That's 13. I asked Mr. Bass how long I should speak for. He said, 3-4 hours. But we need to keep this brief because you all have far more important things to be doing today, whether it's laying on the beach or whether it's setting up your boards. It's more important than sitting here listening to me, that's for sure. The priority list assignment, though, is one that I encourage you to do with your students, especially with the older students if you're working with them. The young ones will not have that sense of perspective. But the words, the 26 words, they're in the book, which I hope you read someday. Words like love, honor, wealth, spirituality, artistic expression, I would have them put these 26 words in order of personal importance. And it's a difficult thing to really sit there and think, who's more important to me, my family or my friends? Maybe it's easy for you, but when you're 16 years old, not so easy. To decide what's more important, career or wealth, or is it education? It would help my students to come to understand themselves and each other. And they would share them with one another. I would have this time where I project the words on the board itself. and have kids go up there and number it for all the class to see if they were willing to. And I would warn them that this is the equivalent of standing naked in front of the class, because they're going to see you without your defenses, without your protection, without your image, without your swagger. They're going to know what you think about spirituality, that it's number 1 in your life, and that sex is number 26, or the reverse, which was usually more true. But what became important with the list, and what I want you to look for if you ever decide to do it, it's not the number next to the word, it's how it flows together. What are the words that surround the words? For instance, if I saw one of my students put the word sex, which is on the list, next to power, that meant something. Or if it was next to respect, that meant something. And that was a conversation worth having. Questions needed to be asked at that point. Why do you have sex and respect right next to each other? And then I would hear that answer. Oh, because the guys don't, respect you unless you're getting some, or whatever it is. And that was a lesson that needed to be taught. No, it's not on the standardized exam at the end of the year. But if one of my girls thought that, she was only going to get respect if she put out, I needed to teach something at that moment that needed to be corrected. And that was more important to me than the FCAT or the HSCT or whatever test we had that year. What's the test this year, Mr. Ross? FSA. FSA? Was that in airlines? Enjoy the FSA. I'm sure it's just as interesting as last year's test and the year before's and next year's. Yeah, I like that. Does anybody have a question for me? Something I can answer for you? If you have the Q's, I'll have the A's. Paw in the air? Traditional? Anyone? Go ahead and get that.
Friend is fine.
Okay, I'll tell you about how I handled phones in my classroom. Because phones are the enemy. They really are. And not just because they'll text each other or cheat with each other using their phones, but because they're taking pictures and video recordings of you. And you don't want that. Excuse me. So, early on in the school year, I would establish my phone rule. And again, I'm teaching AP 11th grade. So these kids have wanted to go to college. I knew that just by the fact that they chose the class. So I would say to them, the first time I see you with your phone, I'm simply going to take your phone and put it in my desk till the end of the period. You could have it back then. That's your warning. The second time I see you with your phone, no more letter of recommendation. Oh, that was terrifying to them. That really was, because they knew that at the end of junior year, the summer between junior and senior year, they had to apply to colleges. And they wanted a recommendation from their writing teacher, from their English teacher. Yeah, good luck with your math teacher on that one, or your gym coach. Sorry, math teachers. No offense, well, little offense intended. Okay. There's 3 kinds of people in this world. Those who can count and those who can't. Just getting that. The English teachers. Hope I've made it clear to you which one of those I am. So I tried as often as possible with my classroom rules to be very positive in them and try not to have them be restrictive. For instance, I told them, look, if you want to go to the bathroom, that's fine. If you don't want to be in my class, if you don't want to listen, don't be here. I don't want you here either then. Go to the bathroom, go sit in the stall and text all you like. But when you're in this room, we're going to be working on English, so no phones. Phone, no recommendation. And that frightened them. I never saw a phone. And if I ever did, I made a big display out of it. I would take the phone and say, okay, this is your warning. This is the one time I'm putting it in my desk. If I ever see this again, you're going to have to get your Spanish teacher to write you your letter of recommendation. Yo quiero. Another example of that would be, I encouraged my kids to pass notes in class. It was a 2-hour class, and I knew they wouldn't be able to sit there without talking to their friends for 2 straight hours. So I'd say, okay, pass a note. But Don't, throw it. Don't distract everybody else in the room. If you're not interested in what I have to say, if you're more interested in your friend, fine. Write a note. Why would I stop you? You're reading and writing. And they thought that was brilliant, that I was just the best teacher in the world. I'm going to let them pass notes. But they would never do it. Kids don't write notes anymore. They wanted to text each other. And they couldn't. I had one classroom rule, officially. And that one classroom rule was respect at all times. And of course, this included respect for each other, themselves, for me, for all of the school's rules and procedures, the time class started and ended, the classroom decorations and furniture. Yeah, one rule, respect. Respect all the school's rules. So they would get this impression of like, oh, he's so chill, he's so laid back, that's all he wants out of us. But then, of course, the second I saw them breaking dress code or anything else, they'd say, hey, you're not respecting the school's rules. Busted. But to get back to my original point, the power that you all have. As I was traveling the country, I spent 101 days visiting my former students, 75 different couches. And I would ask them what they remembered from back in class. And more times than not, it was these little moments when I was kneeling beside them by their desk, asking them why they were crying or what was going on, that they would remember. Those one-on-one personal moments, the little things that mattered. And I would come back and say, well, do you remember Huckleberry Finn? Oh yeah, that was the one with the kid and the black guy, right? So you don't remember. Okay. But they definitely remembered my moments with them. And they're going to remember yours. So take advantage of them and realize that even though you're not necessarily being video recorded, you are being recorded. They do remember you. And all of these words that you say are having positive and negative influences that you may not even be aware of. So choose your words wisely and speak them well.
This is Ken Bass, who's the principal of one of our charter schools, the Central Campus, who brought David Menasche to us today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
My
pleasure. That was a wonderful, wonderful morning for me.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I think it was a great experience for all of our teachers and staff that were here to listen to the words that David had to share.
And this is our speaker of the day, David Menasche. And it was, honestly, I'm sorry that you're not teaching anymore. You're a terrific teacher. I'm sure you are.
I truly do.
It was wonderful to listen to you speak.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
It was wonderful. And I'm very glad to have met you. For OCTV, I'm Elaine Kuhlman, and I really want to thank you for joining us today at the auditorium, listening to all the speakers, and hope you take away something good about teaching. Thanks again.